just had a saying that we are what we eat. How are we digested? How are we get rid of the toxins? And another feed leading
Real life.
statement. I think we're going.
Yeah, we are. Hey, there, everybody. So we're gonna be talking like Texas ranchers here today.
That's right.
So we are here with Keith at prevailovercancer.com, and I'm Paul at Hyperbaric.plus, and we are at 122nd May in Oklahoma City. And if you're ever in this neck of the woods, hope you drop in and see us. But we had a great time in the chamber. We were talking about raising cattle. And it's amazing how many people grew up in that environment. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a bunch of people in here. I'm from Western Oklahoma, and so it's fun. Even in their childhood, they got to go out and be exposed to this. And my, has it changed.
I'm actually a city boy, so this is new stuff for me. So although I have been living in the country now for about 15 years, but it is new for me.
Well, we got to hear a little of your history when you had your pharmacy, and you would have an apple fritter in the morning, and you'd run across to McDonald's or Arby's.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, how we get smarter when we get older. As my dad used to always say, I'd have taken better care of myself had I known I was going to live this way.
No, and that's one of the things we were talking about too, is I've noticed that, well, in my family, my parents didn't live as long as their parents. My wife and I we're gonna, God willing, it looks like we will, well, I've passed my dad. My mother, lived a couple of years after that, but it looks like we're gonna do better, than what they did. But it's what we do. And so, the biggest problem is that we are in this convenience world. And matter of fact, we're going to talk quite a bit about today, but each region has their own food, that's normal. So, the Pacific Rim is an ocean-based food, basically, and the Mediterranean is going to be often a meat source. It's going to be fish, and lamb and goat, and Africa may be goat and some beef type or other animals, and wild game. And then European is going to be a combination of things, and so each region is going to be different, but the same principles apply. And so if we're taking those animals and pinning them up and feeding them and finishing them or growing them in a situation where we're having to give them special food, that's a problem.
Special pharmaceuticals,
Or,
because we want to grow
drugs.
them fast.
Yeah, and drugs. And so they slip things in, they do implant hormone pellets into those animals. They give the hormones in the feed to make, I'm going to back up and talk about cattle here in the United States. They do give them chemicals to fatten them up and make that go fast. We're talking about how it can be slow, otherwise. So, the local ranchers, they're saying it's going to be a couple of years for that cow to finish out. Most cattle, most men or farmers, rather, cattlemen, are actually selling their cows, their steers, and their calves at 1 year. And then they're going to the feedlot and they're finishing them out in a couple more months. So it's more like, it's not a 2-year process.
We're going to dig a little further into that, but let's get your little disclaimer out.
Oh, yeah, disclaimer, that's right.
Let's do that, and we're taking questions. Love to get
Oh,
questions.
yes, yeah. So we are taking questions. So submit those. Ryan's going to help us with that, our producer. And so he's going to get those questions and print those off for us close to the end of the hour, and submit those so we can answer those questions. Also, the information we're providing is for education purposes and to learn and adapt as you're learning. The information we're providing is not medical advice. If we don't know the specifics about you, we're not your doctor. And then if we do mention supplements, and probably won't go into that much, but also make that disclaimer. So supplements are not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease per government regulations. It doesn't mean that these things aren't effective. It's just that they're not approved for that. And so we have to be careful about the labeling and statements, things like that. So So back into the food thing. So
This is
Oh,
on
yes.
East website
Yeah.
as well as on, and it's under what on
yeah,
your?
my learning center. Learning center on my website. And so actually I've changed things up on the website. So I'm starting to put these handouts at the bottom of the learning center. And I have several things and actually it's just a line like this one, sourcing clean protein seminar. And you click on that and you can download this document.
It's on our resource page on hyperbaric.plus and go to the resources and it's at the very top.
Yes, and so I will be looking on this, just kind of help make sure that I'm covering everything. And so, so it starts off with even on this guide, talking about, for you, ever since I've been doing clinical nutrition, helping people do natural things, try to get this source of the problem, I've always told people, and many of you that watch know this, we are what we eat, how well we absorb those nutrients. So digestion's critical. I work a lot with that. And then also how well we can eliminate those toxins. So poop and urine that out.
Well, let's go a little deeper into that first statement.
Yes.
We are what we eat.
Exactly.
Eats.
Yes. Well, and so therefore, I'm changing. that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm changing
Okay.
that. So, and I have on here, we are what we eat and what that animal eats. Okay. But now, and not just meat. Okay. We will be talking about that a lot today, but any protein source, vegetable, vegetarian, vegan, meat, carnivore, all of that can be contaminated and ruined. And those chemicals, some of them are actually forever chemicals, go into our body and have consequences. So no matter what that source, we want to try to go as natural as possible, try to go organic. I am a city boy originally and had a dream of moving into the country. And matter of fact, I did that. Matter of fact, I moved into the area where I was first exposed to the country. And I love that. And now, yes, I have a garden. I have fruit trees and I have horses. And so I'm actually trying to grow as much stuff as I can because I know that it's natural and it's organic. And we need to apply what I call the KISS principle, which is keep it super simple. There's another way to say that, but KISS, but we'll call it keep it super simple. As simple foods, we just heat up something. And well, the other night we did have a steak. It was delicious. And it was actually about that big. And I cooked that at a low temperature.
How do you get that thick in your palm?
And so that thing, but I don't make that much.
Yeah,
So yeah, so
There you go.
I don't make that much. And then we had a couple of vegetables that we actually did a stir fry on the side of the grill, the burner on the grill. I cooked it outside. And it's a simple meal. We did marinate that steak to decrease the charring and the cancerous type things that can occur at high temperature cooking. And as Paul, he's talking about this all the time, but cooked it at medium rare, to preserve that, and so that overcooking can become a problem on these meats. So,
Really, on any food that you're processing, whether it's vegetables, meat, whatever, the longer you cook it, the
Right.
fewer nutrients it'll be in.
Exactly. So, for example, a classic thing like that is going to be the mushrooms. So, in that stir fry with vegetables in it, we don't cook those mushrooms at the beginning. That's the last thing to go in. And some of those things like, the zucchini, is actually kind of hard and it takes time for that to cook. So I do it in a few different stages. And so, but it's simple. It's oils and salt and pepper and some spices. And so, we need to do the KISS principle, keep it super simple. But we have to be careful about our protein sources. And so most of us don't have access to healthier sources. And so no matter where you live, so whether it be the ocean foods, or if it's land-based animals, or even plant-based products, there can be a lot of chemicals that are used in that process. So we have to be very careful. So yes, we are what we eat eats, you know, and how well we digest it, absorb those nutrients, and how well we can get rid of toxins.
About all the plant vegetables that we eat. What that vegetable eats is what's coming through the mineral in the ground
Yes,
and what's being sprayed on them. I mean, although it's not eating, those are things that are being consumed by
yeah,
all the
oh, yeah,
organic vegetables.
Mhm.
Because if it's coming from contamination previous to when they went organic, it's still drawn out of the soil.
right.
And there can still be heavy metals.
So I'm thinking, you know, about things like that all the time. So I do grow some carrots. I'm not really figured that formula out yet. I'm not a great farmer, you know, and so I'm a gardener and I'm learning. And but, you know, I do like the fact I can go out to my garden and pull out an organic carrot, give that to my horses. Horses eat it. They'll eat, you know, whatever, you know, anybody on that carrot, but they'll eat that carrot. And the natural grasses and hay and things out there. And then it's a circle. And so they poop. And then we poop and mix that hay and we compost, and then it goes back into the garden. And so if I was feeding them synthetic foods and or not organic carrots, now there's chemicals going into them, going into my food, you know, in a cycle. So yes. Now, also, each region has their own foods. And so these principles we're talking about can be applied to any food in any region. So farm-raised fish, no matter whether it's freshwater or ocean, feeding it man-made food pellets is a problem. So ocean-fed food, you know, even years ago, you know, we knew that those fish actually had high amounts of PCBs in it. And PCBs are nasty.
Where is that coming from? I mean, why can't they make good feed for those fish?
Well, they can, but it's a money thing, okay? And I don't know why, once again, the PCBs, where is that coming from? But, you know, how does it get into that fish food to start with? But so, you know, I'm evaluating everything and also making gradual changes. So as you learn things today, it's, you know, kind of make a change and then, you know, get that kind of going, and then you evaluate, okay, what's the next change I can make? Most people can't make all these changes all at once and successfully. And sometimes we have family members that we have to work with too, you know, and help educate them and learn and be willing to change.
So a second ago in the chamber, you were talking about one of your grandkids that was getting grief from somebody older because they're
not actually,
they're not taking that information. They're not making those changes.
And well, some of it's like we just hadn't thought about it. They thought about the changes. And so
my parents never talked to me about nutrition.
No.
You know,
No, exactly. It's like, and I told this story before, you'll remember this story about, you know, mom was fixing a pot roast.
Yeah.
And she cut the ends off the pot roast, put it in the pot, and cooked it. Well, daughter, 5 years old, says, Mom, why did you cut the ends off the pot roast? I don't know. Grandma did that. Well, let's ask her. Okay, so they asked Grandma, why'd you cut off the ends off the pot roast? I don't know. Meemaw did that. You'll need to ask her. Ask Meemaw, why did you cut the ends off the pot roast? Because it wouldn't fit in the pot. And so for 60 years, they've been doing that thing and they didn't know why. And they were just going through it. And we have a tendency to do the same thing. We're not thinking, except for we're thinking, I want something fast. And I want something cheap.
and convenient. I mean, I'm gonna eat it while I'm driving.
Exactly. And that's the part of the fast thing, okay? You know, and so we're making some bad choices. So we need to slow down in our thought process, our store buying process, and our fixing process.
And our eating,
And
should
eating.
chew that
Chew.
food up, and
Chew
not
it.
just scarf it down.
And chew it. And, you know, one little trick I've heard about is, you know, when you're eating, you know, put a bite of food in your mouth and then put your utensil down. You know, and chew on that and then visit. And with the society aspect and relationships are so important. So I have a new, what's called a Prevail protocol that I'm bringing out. It's got 7 pillars to it. And one of those actually is about life and being with people and relationships with God. So very important. We have to slow down our life Sounds like I'm a hippie.
You said that in the chamber too, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's be hippies today.
Yeah, let's be hippies.
Yeah.
So, but you know, we need to slow down and get more.
God-fearing
Yeah,
hippies.
exactly, yes. So, okay, so there's some terms that, you know, we need to be careful about because most of us don't have access to a person that has that animal, you know, if it's gonna be meat. Or even the vegetables and fruit, but on the meat thing. So be careful about certain terms. And, you know, and that means, there's the term natural. That doesn't mean anything, you know, on the label. There's no regulation probably in any country that where natural means anything. So natural flavors are not natural. Hundreds of chemicals are approved for that, and it is not natural. So natural is one of those things that it's like, if it just says natural on it, it's like,
Be suspect.
exactly, okay. I need to do a little bit more research on that before I do that. And then, let's see here, there's some other terms. There's also, there's grain finished. And so grain means that's the feed that they're giving the animals, no matter what those sources are, the man processed food that we're giving the animals. So that is not as good. And then, let's see here, we have, let's see here, feedlot finished. So that's where they're actually selling the cattle, they put it in the feedlot. That's where they're getting it the synthetic foods, some natural things, but they're also maybe giving it synthetic and hormones, for example. And then there's, also pasture raised. So, well, let's go to chicken. I don't think it's chicken soup. There's also what's called cage free. And that just means that the chickens aren't caged up in this little tiny 1 foot square box. That means now there's thousands of chickens in the building under one roof. And they're still in that 1 foot square. And yes, they're not caged up in that metal cage or box, for example. So pasture-raised is a newer term that I really like, you know, and so pasture-raised, pasture-raised, well, they can get out and eat more things. So another kind of a term, you'll see, you know, this may be you can make this choice if you want to go vegan, maybe, but they'll say vegetarian or vegan fed chickens. Chickens are not vegans. Okay, they're omnivores. They eat any and everything. So I've had chickens, and I know they eat any and everything. So you're
It's going in my yard.
which is good.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, matter of fact, those eggs are definitely better because of eating all kinds of stuff. And so, matter of fact, that's another. I'm going to be creating a kind of a chicken coop. I don't have chickens currently. But I'm going to be creating a chicken coop that I can move those chickens around. You know, and because I'm not always home, but I can move that coop around because they're going to eat the grass. They're going to feed, and I want them to do that for a little bit there, and then I want to move it just to do something else. And then they do get out and eat things, all kinds of things too. So that's a great option. Let's see, what are some other terms that we'll be careful about? So we've got pasteurized is good, better.
Cage-free, pasture-raised.
Pasture-raised, yeah, pasture, so you still have to know a little bit. I think one of our biggest problems is we've gotten away from the local providers. And so we're buying food literally in the United States, beef that comes from other countries. We have no idea what's going on in those other countries, what they're feeding them, how they're raised, what kind of antibiotics are they getting.
I was talking to this whole thing kind of came from people I've been meeting in the beef industry that are doing things the right way. They're doing grass-fed, grass-finished. And so all this turned into conversation in other areas. Our meat is so USDA protected that it makes it more lucrative to send it out of the country. And you and I both know, maybe that's suspect in itself, being USDA protected, but they don't have any of that in a lot of these other countries. So they want our meat for that reason. And then we turn around and import the stuff that they're not wanting to eat. I mean, that's what a beef producer shared with me, that's what's going on. And that's why the cost of beef is going up so much.
Yeah.
And then when you throw in, hey, so I got to know a farmer here and BF Farms here in Oklahoma City. They're places are up in Enid, and they're grass-fed, grass-finished. And man, have I been getting schooled on what that means and why it's so beneficial. And so we've been sharing that. That's why I asked if we could do this, and that's coming. So I'm gonna let you get back on topic, but it's amazing how we could support those farmers,
Yes.
and we have to.
Well, and actually, I do want to talk about that now.
Mhm.
And so, about supporting the local farmer. And so by doing that, if you can talk like one of our friends here today, she actually went to the farms,
Mhm.
and actually to the farmer's house, to learn about what they're doing. And actually the farmers, they like to share.
Oh, really? Yeah.
If they don't like to share, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Okay, but the same thing when you go to the farmer's market, great sources, but they have a tendency sometimes to do the same thing as everybody else, trying to make as much money as possible. So you have to have that relationship and you have to know what they're doing. You have to ask the questions or go check and see what they're doing.
So what shied me away from the grass-fed, grass-finished is it costs so much more. And I mean, it's 30% more probably. But as I'm learning from you and from trying to get a little research under my hands, when you eat those nutrient-dense foods, whether it's lettuce, whether it's vegetables or meat, meat is very nutrient-dense when it's not contaminated, when it's not
Diluted.
diluted. There's a good
other
word.
things.
Yeah, so, but when you put growth hormones and antibiotics and all, the farmer I'm working with now, if they get a cow that gets a cut, they don't put antibiotics on it, they take it to the cell bar. They just call that animal so that they can maintain no injection. And that's what they're proud about. That's what their whole business is based on. And that's why they like to talk about it, because nobody else, very few people operate at that level.
Right.
Now, instead of paying $7.50 a pound for a hamburger, and you're paying $11.50 a pound, I think, somewhere in there, the nutrient denseness is going to, and I get these names wrong, satiate.
Right.
That right?
Feel fulfilled or full and satisfied.
Satisfied. So now I'm eating something that's nutrient dense, so I'm only eating 2/3 of what I used to eat.
Right. Yes,
So there's that cost difference.
that's right. But right, if we go back and look, back in the 1930s and before really mass production was really taking place, people having a hamburger, how big was that hamburger? It was, it was
Yeah,
that
the
big.
original McDonald's hamburger was that big.
It was that big.
Yeah.
Not this, it is that big.
Mhm.
And
But it was also real.
yes, and because it was coming from the local providers.
And so now the more that we take the real out and it's processed and then ultra processed, our body's not getting satisfied and we eat 3 times as much.
And we do absorb those carbohydrates and bad fats that have consequences. And it sounds like somebody forgot to turn the phone off. So, on that. Is that my phone? Yes, it is. Would you mind printing it out, hold on, please, or hanging it up? So, got to turn the phone
Thank
off.
you.
Thanks. And so, I get a lot of them. But, so we have to get things locally. We have to know those people. And that supports that person. So this person, if he was able to actually have a little bit bigger operation, you think the cost of things would go down a little bit? Probably would.
Well, and if he's gonna make money with, so the whole thing is, so he's got fewer cattle because people are buying less because it's more nutrient dense. So that there's gotta be a trade-off there that other people are gonna see what's going on. So I've got another client here who raises Wagyu Angus. And when I started talking about grass-fed, grass-finished, he wouldn't have any conversation about it. He goes, "Paul, I gotta fatten them up. That's when I make my money, is when I get them fat."
That's the word. Good.
And so I shared what Doug is doing. And I said, what if you were able to charge 33% more and maintain that quality of grass-fed, grass-finished? Isn't that less work than having to move them to a feeding area and start giving them grain? And he goes, Or it just doesn't taste the same. And that's where Doug says, hey, you know how I finish my beans? I take them out. I've got one field. He got 17 fields that have never been sprayed in 100 years that his family has operated these farms. They got 17 farms that have never been sprayed with anything. The cattle create the fertilizer.
Yes, that's right.
And then they eat it. But anyway, the finishing field is where he lets the grass grow very tall and he lets the roots grow very deep. They don't put the cattle on there until they're ready to finish. And he said, Paul, the mineral content comes from those deep roots. And that's what gives that cow all that flavor, all those minerals that come out of those deep roots. Because our other fields, we haven't raised them like that to have that kind of quality. We're trying to grow them as fast as we can, but we are going to finish them instead of on grains.
Right.
On deep rooted grasses, native grasses.
Right. So those native grasses also, it's kind of like wild game in a way. And so they are eating different food, but they're eating seeds, from those plants, which provide the omega-3 fatty acids that our body needs.
Instead of omega-6, by being,
From the
when
bad fats.
you feed them grain at the end and you finish them on grain in a feedlot or in a fenced area, then you're taking on all these omega-6s, which is what is inflammatory.
Exactly.
And so if we can just flip that, and that's huge. And, eat beef 2 or 3, 4 times a week, eat salmon or fish, wild caught fish, the other balance of that, or even go vegan.
Yeah.
A couple of days.
Yeah, for myself, my cancer clients, I'm doing beans once a day.
Yeah, there you go.
For one of my protein sources. And then typically 1 serving of animal protein a day. And then nuts and seeds for my 3rd protein source every day. So I think that's a perfect combination.
Yeah, and I throw one of my meals, I eat once a day. I do intermittent fasting. I eat once a day. I can't believe, I used to weigh 285 pounds. I'm down to 207. And just eating that one meal a day, I'm totally satisfied with that. I might have a little snack somewhere close to that window, but I don't eat we talked about this recently. If food touches your tongue, that cascade of things happens. The glycemic index, even though it's a little bitty snack, maybe it's a cracker, right? But when you do that, everything starts, and that's where you get a blood spike, and that is brain health at some level, sir. Because that glucose is being spiked and going into your brain. And people that are snacking all the time, we have a lot of people with cognitive issues that come in here, and that's the first thing I ask is, how often do you eat? Because if you're eating snack, I snack all day long. Well, that could have some impact on what you're dealing with.
Sure does. And so the density of the nutrients, is satisfying and decreases the concerns about cravings. And so if we have a snack that, I'll say chips, snack chips, which are deep fried, typically, maybe baked, but then they've got these coatings on them of spices that are geared so that you will like it. But then within an hour, now you're going hypoglycemic, and now you've got to eat again.
So how many people came out of the tobacco industry into the potato chip industry?
Well, they're owned by a company, actually. Exactly, they're owned by
There's different reasons.
The tobacco companies own, those food companies. So yes, and they just shifted those science that create that taste. But the nutrient-dense foods, we don't have to eat as frequently. We don't have to have those carbs. The carbs are what puts the weight on. Excess carbohydrates. So local farmers, support that farmer, that rancher, get to know them, and check to see what they've got. And so, and actually, if you live in a large city, that's a challenge. You may not be able to do that, but you can still start making changes and selections in your food at the grocery store.
My local farmers is teaching me things that I never knew. I'm not going to get that at Walmart. But you're not going to learn about that.
Big stores. What we're saying, if you live in, we are blessed where we live because it's a fairly rural area. And so we can drive 30 minutes in the country. So we are blessed with that. Not everybody has that. And so therefore you have to pay attention to those labels, and we go back to, the grass fed, grass finished, and read those labels. And so for example, even what's on the chickens, if it says that it's, water chilled, that means it may actually have been water and chlorine chilled. And so they do use chlorine on foods to disinfect the foods, keep bacteria from growing on them for longer term storage. So we have to read those labels and think of that part of that. So
We jumped all around.
that's right. That's the purpose of this, is to share. But also remember what we're talking about, is can be applied to your local area, because we have people from all over the world that are watching. And each region has your own foods, but still it's the local provider. You want to check out that local provider, get to know them, for your vegetables, your fruit, your meat, and that's going to be a healthier option for you with them.
And we can be local provider. One of the biggest nutrient dense foods that I love is broccoli sprout.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's all these other sprouts that we can do. My wife got a big bag of them and got to mix them up, and he makes them about once a week.
Yeah.
And they last about 4 or 5 days after they're completed. Takes about 3 days to grow them. They come in a jar, and it's so compact you can't hardly get them out of there.
That's, my last batch came out like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So, man, and we're making it ourselves. I mean, we're buying the raw seed, making that. And when you put a clump of that on top of a salad,
Yeah.
That's nutrient.
Yeah, matter of fact, I had it to everything. And-
Yeah.
And I pulled that out. My last batch, I didn't turn it often. You can turn it at least a couple of times a day, keep them clumping up like that. But my last batch was like that. But I had it to my beans, and I use it as a garnish on almost everything. I put it on my steak, on top of the steak. That's what you pay big bucks at restaurants for them to do that.
Yeah.
To do the microgreens.
Anything.
So
To do it at your
at the sushi restaurant, and they charge, in Florida, they charge a lot of money to put microgreens, fresh microgreens on that fish.
Well, if you go to My Whole Paycheck, if you go there or Sprout and you buy a little container of microgreens, I mean, that buys a bag of seed that'll
Yeah,
make
exactly.
100 times that.
Exactly.
So anyway, really, there's cheap ways to get nutrients.
So you don't have to have a garden. You can do these things. Matter of fact, the broccoli sprouts, a significant source of sulforaphane, anti-cancer, detoxing, liver support, and you don't have to have a garden.
And if you like spice, they can be pretty darn spicy.
They are a little different.
Yeah, they can
Yeah.
be spicy.
And there's all kinds of seeds they can do that with.
Yeah, play with it. Figure out what
different
you like.
ones, exactly, different ones, and you don't have to just stick to just broccoli,
Yeah.
although that's what I do. On that, it's just the broccoli. So let's see here, what else can I talk about? Talk about hormone and implants, yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the cattle, they do have a tendency in those feedlots to, to put hormone pellets in them. Increase hormones and estrogens to make them fatter and gain weight, marbleize to make that meat more tender. So we want to be careful about that. Let's see, the confined animal feeding overall, that's a problem. So you drive by certain areas, here and especially in Texas, the feedlots. Thousands and thousands and thousands of heads of calves
Standing in mud
standing
and
in there, and
they got to get antibiotics because if anything ever got out in that feedlot, it would spread rapidly. So there's probably a preventative that they're having to do just by putting them together in close quarters.
So you say this a lot. So basically, if it says grass finished, that it can be one of those better type labels, right?
And you can't find it.
And
And it's expensive.
so I have seen some, and so health food stores are going to have more than anybody else.
So I'm out in Arcadia, Luther area. And we have a store, little country store there in Arcadia, and they got 5 different ranches, frozen beef. And it goes from it covers the whole deal. It may be custom processed, It may be grass-fed, grass-finished, but they got a label for each farm above the freehold. And it's an awesome resource. But I'm working now directly with the rancher, and he actually has all this beef. The biggest deal is to learn what you like and then order a quarter. He even goes down to an eighth, order an eighth or a quarter or a half of a beef.
Right.
And so his deal is to introduce you to grass fed. And one of the things he tells you, the farther you go past medium rare, the less nutrient. We talked about that a minute ago, but also gets weather like because it doesn't have all that marble in it.
Right.
But man, I go to his garage where he sells it in small quantities so that you can get accustomed to what it is and order the large quantity. Right. So ease into it. You don't have to go buy a half a cow to see if you like grass-fed beef.
Right.
Find a way to ease into it and, play with it. Don't just have your first dish and blow it off. And understand that nutrient density, understand being nourished faster. We used to do green juice a lot. I haven't done it in a while, but you're taking all these high nutrient value greens and you're pressing it, you're extracting all the fiber and you're just getting the juice. You can't hardly finish a cup of that.
Right.
Because it's so nutrient dense.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's very important. So the density of the food is going to be important. So let's see here. Okay, natural, all natural, don't go with that label. Okay. USDA organic is good. That's good. And I do definitely go that way. And then, but also there's also what's called the American Grass-Fed Association, the AGA certified. So that's an extra step with me, probably a little bit more money because they have to go out and inspect, and then they have to have the records showing that they do what they do. But that would be another one. And then there's also or the term grass-fed, grass-finished is a better option with that. So pork is another area. It's the same type of problem. So we're talking about beef a lot. That's what we do here in Oklahoma. But pork, is the same, and chicken's the same kind of problem. What do hogs eat in the wild? All kinds of stuff. If they're not in the wild and they're in a pen, now we're having to give them a man-made food. That's going to be a different situation. So unless you can do a hay kind of thing, I'm not expert on pigs. That type of thing. So
I try to stay away from pork. I mean, if you want to go to a barbecue joint, you're in a lot of times be eating pork.
Right.
But I just try to stay away from pork.
Well, the biblical guidelines and Mosaic laws, and even some other religions have some similar type laws. Food recommendations, actually do limit certain foods. And there's reasons why, and they're not necessarily as clean, have more of a tendency to have problems with parasites. And then the same thing with the hog type situation is that, to grow those, you have to put them into a situation where it's not clean. Scrounging around and getting their plants.
I said this in the chamber. We had a Brazilian that was a friend of one of my counterparts here, and my brain master lives here. So anyway, he comes in, he's Brazilian, and we're talking about grass-fed, grass-finished, and he had this puzzled look on his face, and he's like, what are you guys talking about? We put cattle out on a field, and then we take it to the slaughterhouse. What are you talking about, grass-fed? Of course they eat grass. Well, we have that other component that we run into a feedlot to fatten them up. And he's just totally oblivious to that. They don't have that in the field. They are grass-fed and grass-finished.
Yes. And so we've allowed that manufacturing process and convenience thing to take place.
So, and in the US, if you guys are following the news at all, there's 4 packing houses that run the US meat packing industry. So they consume 80 to 85% out of these 4 meat packers. And we've lost, I think the number, if I remember right, if I have my computer, but the number is around a little over 600,000 independent producers have gone out of business since these meat packers took over the industry. where they used to make 75% of the profits, and 25% went to the packer, it's flipped. Now the producers are making 25% of the profits, and the packers are making it 75, and they're running the show.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to support these independent processors, independent farmers. Let's get out of that. If we use our pocketbook, we can change what goes on. But if we don't address it, it won't change.
Yeah, do the local thing. So, matter of fact, there's a restaurant out in the country that we like to go to, and they actually do have local beef. And then, but on the side of the road, there's an egg stand. And small, it's an acre, it's not a gigantic farm, but by the highway, there's a stand there, and you can stop there, put your money in the slot, and take your dozen of eggs with you. And it's just like, it's really neat, fresh eggs. They're picked the day or day before.
Well, at our church, we probably have a half a dozen people that raise chickens, and they bring all their eggs to church every Sunday and get rid of them.
In that situation, so 6 chickens, 6 eggs every day. So yeah, it's on the time. So okay, buy direct, from the local farmer or ranch. That is a key. We need to have those local relationships. Oh, by the way, submit your questions. Ryan will print those off and we'll go through those. I don't have my watch. I didn't. So quarter till, a couple more minutes. Okay. And then buy from the local farmer. Use farmers markets. That's something that, some here, they're open more like on the weekend type of thing. If I help people that work during the week, and food co-ops, local meat sharing type situations. Matter of fact, the butcher that we use, they actually have frozen meat ready to go. So you don't have to, like you said, you don't have to buy that whole or a half or a quarter, of a calf. You can actually buy some, and you can try with a chunk of it. So it's not just beef. And then you can look also for third-party verifications. That's a little bit more confusing. And actually, if it's a local grown, that may not happen. That means not good. But if you're in a city, you may have to go more like that type of situation and to get some certifications, because you can't certify it yourself. You can't go to the farm itself. And then diversify your region's proteins, and so, beef is not the only thing we have here. We have other meats and other protein sources. And so we need to take advantage of that. And same thing with your area that you're in. Take advantage of your local foods, no matter what that is.
I didn't mean to go this far before I brought this up, but I'm watching some videos about pasture-raised beef, and that's amino acids. Peptides are amino acids.
Yes.
So all this is kind of come together that they're finding the peptides to deal with cancer. That's a study that's really, they're doing a lot of work in that space. And I know first time you and I talked and said, Paul, I'm not getting into that. And you have.
I didn't know about it.
And you have been, I hear you talking a little bit more about peptides, and you have to be real careful. There's growth peptides and there's peptides that will fight cancer. And that's where all the research is right now. And I've been watching some influencers on TV that are talking about grass-fed, grass-finished, the amino acid levels that you get out of that kind of meat, and how that is going to be a path to fighting cancer.
Yeah, and that is going to be the case, because we do have to have protein. And although certain amino acids can, definitely, well, cancer cells use everything.
Right.
Everything that our body needs, cancer cell needs. And so you can try to isolate and take out certain amino acids, you can try, but you can't do that. But that comes back to, and we talked about this before, about intermittent fasting, short-term fasting, longer fasts. We literally starve cancer cells for a while, mix it up. And so you can't fast forever, but if you eat all the time, 6 times a day, you're going to provide too much energy for the cancer cells.
But if you eat whole foods across the spectrum and don't eat trash, if you get your body into homeostasis, if you get your immune system healthy, That's what fights cancer.
That's right.
If you're constantly eating processed foods, your body's so busy with having to digest all those processed foods that it can't fight cancer.
Correct.
And it, you know, for it to be so simple, you know, just sounds too simple, but really that's where we've taken our bodies in, and that's why we have these problems.
Well, and so nutrient deficiency, so you know, by choosing these foods and proteins, you know, getting the healthier type of nutrients, then we are going to get better immune response. For example, beef is a great source of zinc. Zinc is required for all of the immune system to work right. And another area that most of us haven't heard much about, I'm going to be creating a blog post about this, is P53. That's an enzyme in our body that actually kills cancer cells, and it keeps cells from turning into cancer. But it has zinc molecule right in the middle of it. If there's not a zinc molecule in there, now it's not shaped right. Now it can actually a cancer cell. And so we have to have these basic nutrients, and we can test for nutrients. We can supplement, definitely supplements. We can use those. I find actually 3/4 of, well, probably more like 7/8 of my clients are deficient in zinc. And they actually have more copper than they do zinc. Just a client yesterday, I mean, another person, she sent a copy of her lab test, same thing.
I know how to get people over to Flourish. They've got that little test
That
kit.
little taste.
We were 5 for 5. Nobody met the zinc requirement. 5 out of 5 of my clients that they're all healthy minded. They all thought everything's good. We'll just check it. And 5 out of 5 of us that take zinc are deficient.
So they're not getting that. No, not just beef, but ocean foods have zinc also.
Well, it could be that our body's not absorbing it properly. I mean, that's part of this whole thing is we can take all these supplements, we can eat all the right meat, but if our body's not prepared to process it, it's not going to be bioavailable. It's going to go right through it.
Exactly.
And so how do we make? So anyway, that's the science that I know you work with.
Exactly. And I do testing on that. In fact, earlier yesterday, one of my clients, he said, well, I can't take zinc. That hurts my stomach. Well, you're taking the wrong kind of zinc. Because that's a rock that you're trying to take. Zinc glutamate will affect zinc. I've experienced that. And there's others that are better absorbed. Actually, so foods have zinc in them in an ion form. It's readily absorbed. So yes, certainly a steak isn't going to have that 15 milligrams of zinc. It's going to have like 4 or 5 milligrams, but it's 100% absorbed. That.
Well, anybody that's fighting these things that you deal with your clients at, why would we try to do that on our own? You've got so many years of knowledge, and that's what I tell all my clients that come in here, and we start down that path. Like, I can't imagine that first phone call you get from a new person that got a diagnosis. Where do you start?
Yeah.
And so we'll get in here and have some conversation just to whet their appetite. Tell them to go research it a little bit, but don't make any decisions until you talk to somebody that's knowledgeable. Right. Don't see it on.
There you go, Ryan. Come over here.
No, don't.
Yeah, you want me to can.
Don't see it on somebody's website and just go for it.
Yeah, so
You gotta check that out.
assess and don't guess. Actually, I've got a little slogan now. It's actually prevail, assess, don't guess. Okay, so we gotta go through those steps. So
So we're 5 till. Let's see if we can.
So we go through that. So check out the downloads on our websites, the resources page at Hyperbaric+, and the learning center at prevailcancer.com. Okay, so we got a few questions we'll go through. So grass fed doesn't always mean grass finished. What labels should families trust? Well, so that's what we're saying. Grass fed just means that they ate some grass sometime, and actually they can put that on any of it. If they are eating grass out there. But grass finished is what you do want to see. And a company doesn't have to put that on there. So, but if you're looking at a label, and if they say grass finished, that would be a better option. But
If it says grass fed, that means that there could have been a patch of grass in the feedlot.
that's right.
They had access to.
Or well, when they were a baby, they, whatever.
Yeah, that's how.
A year ago, they were on some grass. So yes. So That's correct. Grass finished is really what we're looking for. Same thing with those chickens. We want, pastured eggs, organic pastured eggs. We want pasture raised, free range, chickens. It would be another term that would be more favorable, to get more natural type things.
They say free range and then the ultimate is pasture raised.
Yes.
What I'm understanding. So that's what I look for when I'm out. If I can't get them from my neighbor.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So, we're, many in my neighborhood, we have, all of us have an acreage lot, several acres, and so, we have one person has 2 roosters every morning.
Every morning.
We hear them.
So
So,
the sun,
yeah, before the sun even, so. Okay, so I have extremely high cortisol level from terrible stress for over 2 years. Now I'm eating clean, intermittent fasting, rebounding, walking, can't lose any weight, which is all belly fat. So, there can be several issues. It's hard for me to say exactly what's going on, but you're doing a lot of great things. But make sure you're getting enough protein. And your protein, supports your liver function. We're talking about how important protein is. Half of my clients, I actually increase their protein, they start losing weight. Because what happens is the toxins from everything we've been talking about, okay, chemicals in our foods go into our bodies. If we can't get rid of those toxins, it creates water retention and weight gain, stored in fat. And until we support the detox mechanisms to get rid of those toxins, it's not going to happen. And so supporting detoxification would be another area to look at. Make sure that you're getting enough protein. And then I use a BIA. I have a guide about that too. And it's a BIA bioimpedance analysis test that measures how much water, muscle, bone, and fat. And even a better machine actually is the one that you can stand on and you hold the hand. With that, you can actually measure how much water is inside, outside the cells. If there's water outside the cells and cells are damaged with a phase angle with that better machine, that's a sign of toxins.
how much is that? I know
That one?
the cheap one's 25.
$25, yes. So that one, I think, and I have a link on my website now,
Okay.
and in my guide, it is, I think it's like $159. So it's not bad,
No,
and amazing.
I would have paid that for the one I'm using that was 25 had
Yeah.
it,
Oh, yeah, and so it can even calculate how much muscle mass you have in your arm.
Hmm.
And how much muscle mass you have in this arm. And ideally, it should be even, although we can be more dominant because we use one arm more than the other. But also we kind of get some ideas. If one leg is not as good, it's like, well, why is that? And what's going on? So with that. So anyway, so check that out and then to help out with that weight loss. I think the same person probably, I forgot to add, I have gained 30 pounds in the 2 years. All of my food comes from local farms. So once again, I'm not sure what's going on, but make sure you're getting enough protein, and keep doing what you're doing, but check out that machine, the BIA assessment. And if you burn a little bit of fat and your water retention gets worse, classic toxin issue.
And Keith is a wealth. I mean, you be a client of Keith. It's virtual. It's, I mean, pick up the phone, get on your computer, Keith, can you talk for a minute? He's going to charge you accordingly.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, I want to do it right. I'm tired of doing things the way I think I need to be doing them. I just learned so much from you, and what have I given up doing it the wrong?
Right, yeah. Well, just in that area alone, actually using that type of equipment, I think I lost count after 20,000 tests using that type of equipment to evaluate things just like this person's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, so by supporting detox and making sure there's enough protein and and there can be food sensitivity issues too. Okay. So there's several things involved. We make a few changes and it always works. And then when a person goes back to the way they're eating, they always win.
How does somebody share that information that they're getting on the machine with you?
So usually they're going to do a screenshot, because it's an app on their phone,
Right.
and they'll do a screenshot on that. Some of them, they can actually also print that out with their computer.
Yeah. So assess, don't guess.
Yes.
I mean,
Right.
Keith's middle name.
So, I guess I can change that. Let's see, how do we actually know if the meat we're buying is healthy or just marketed to look healthy? Great question. We've got to look for those, those words. And so, companies are using phrases that, are
Marketing slogans.
They are. And so, yeah, so we have to be careful about the natural type things, that kick in there. So,
Find that local provider. We just keep going back there.
yes, find that local provider and support that. Matter of fact, support that local business. That's part of it. Like, we see signs here, shopping, like I live in Yukon, shopping Yukon. And
there's an influencer on TV, Steak and Butter Gal.
okay.
And she goes to Costco, she goes to Sprout, and she goes to all these places. You can go watch her videos. And it's crazy that the things that are healthy for you are out of stock. So she's going to read the labels and tell you this is good or bad. And when she's in Costco, it's crazy how often she goes into Costco and the things that are the most healthy are gone.
Yeah.
Don't buy that junk.
Yes, that's right.
And they'll switch their inventory.
They will switch it. Matter of fact, so nothing about Costco or any store, okay, not just Costco, but all the stores. Here in Oklahoma, the selection is not as good and not as organic as it is in California.
Because
New
we're
York,
not asking for it. Go to
Exactly.
the, say, I would be buying this if it was good, but you're putting, why don't you get the good stuff?
That's right. The local Costco doesn't have organic almonds and walnuts and pecans.
Why not?
But
Because we're not asking
they
for it.
actually have their own brand
Yeah.
that is organic and they don't even carry it.
So, hey, I'm telling you guys, that's how we're gonna change things. So I'll leave that alone, set it over the fine.
So, hormones, antibiotics and feed used in industrial farming, something people should generally be concerned about long-term? Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I've actually had, clients with ovarian cancer and total hysterectomy, no evidence of disease. And we tested their estrogen levels and they were sky high because of things that they were eating and their face creams that they're putting on their skin. Estrogens, okay? And so, yeah, it is a problem. And excess estrogens are a stimulant and a weight gain type of a thing. So,
That's crazy.
yeah, and so yes, it is, definitely, this is a major concern. And it's not something that you're gonna feel the difference. That is frustrating. You will not feel the difference today or tomorrow. It's a long-term play.
Well, if you take that roast that you're cooking and you take the collagen out of the pan and you're doing all the same thing, you're coming from a different direction.
Mhm. Yeah.
Have that collagen, use up that whole beef everywhere you can, all the bone broth. And get that from the inside, that's gonna change the thing you're trying to change from the outside.
Yeah, exactly.
So simple.
So we gotta be making, we do have to be making those changes, and it does make a difference. You're not gonna notice it today. It's a long play.
So it is 5 after.
Oh,
I
wow.
got my clients sitting around here ready to jump in the chamber.
Yes.
So I don't want to hold them up any longer. There's so much to know about this. I encourage people to go out, not just what we're doing, but if you're ever on YouTube, search that stuff out and then question it. Before you call Keith, get a little knowledge under your belt, write those questions down so you can use that time with Keith the best way possible. But Keith at prevailovercancer.com, what a resource. I feel so fortunate. I can't believe we had a client come in the other day and they said, Keith Bishop, I watch him online all the time. And I said, yeah, he lives in Mustang. What? I said, yeah, come and meet him. So, and he said you ran into somebody in the airport in Boston or something?
Right, in Florida.
In Florida, and walked
No,
up there.
that was Atlanta, yeah.
And they heard your voice.
Just heard my voice.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It just,
So you are helping a lot of people. You're making an impact, and that's what it's all about. So I'm Paul with Hyperbaric.plus, Keith with PrevailOverCancer.com. If you're in the area, drop in. If you can ever be here Thursday at 10 o'clock, that's a great time to meet Mr. Keith. But until next week, do you know what we're going to do next week?
no.
Well, let's figure it out.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Talk to you later. All right. Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
I'll try.